Hello and welcome to Quarterlight, your car brochure channel. In today's episode, we're going to be looking at the 1983 Triumph Acclaim. Hello and welcome back to Quarterlight. Quarterlight, if you don't know, we're here on YouTube, a very small YouTube channel looking at cars from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s, sometimes beyond that as well. So if you're into cars and car brochures, please consider subscribing. Anyway, back to today's episode for the Triumph Acclaim. We're looking through the 1983 full range brochure and we've arrived at the Triumph Acclaim, a car that's actually very important to me and also a car that was very important for Austin Rover. Anyway, let's have a look at that now. So here it is, the 1983 Triumph Acclaim. Important to me, I suppose we should start there. Important to me because it's the first car I drove. I guess I started learning in a Triumph Acclaim. My dad had a 1983 Triumph Acclaim from new. And when I say from new, it was actually a demo car first, but essentially a brand new car on an A plate when the A plates just came out. Replaced his Mini, actually, an 82 Mini that he also had from new. Like I say, it's a car I learned to drive in. It's also a car that relates to brochures, because when my dad was looking for a car in 1983, he basically looked around lots of dealerships, so we ended up with a lot of car brochures. I think a lot of the car brochure, the love of at least, came from the Triumph Acclaim. And like I say, it's a car I learned to drive in. It's also a car that my dad had a long time. He did actually replace it in 1988 for a Ford Sierra Sapphire, but that wasn't the end for the Acclaim, because it then became my mum's car. So we had it for a lot of years and it turned out to be extremely reliable. In fact, this was a real turnaround for British Leyland. They finally had a car that had reliability and high build quality. And that was all down to the new relationship between Honda and British Leyland. Kind of at the start of that relationship, which moved on to the Rovers, of course. And, you know, the twin to this car, or the car related to in the UK, would have been the Honda Blade, which, you know, Honda brought in that great reliability. And this car actually had the record for the least percentage of warranty claims for a British Leyland car. So it was a great car, and, you know, in all the time, 10 plus years that my dad owned it, and then my mum, of course, it never let us down. It never broke down. Started having rust issues late on its life, but like I say, never broke down, never given any trouble, cost basically nothing to run. And other than tyres and maybe an exhaust or two, I think that's all it ever had done to it. Anyway, this particular brochure, Triumph Acclaim for discerning drivers. Let's zoom in on this little image. So this front page is actually featuring the top of the range one. We can tell it's the top of the range one because it's got these headlamp washers. This is the Triumph Acclaim CD. My dad wasn't a fancy one like the CD, it was just the HL, but like I say, featuring the CD on the front here. When we turn the page, we'll start off with the L and we'll see how that trim builds. Okay, so the first page is actually featuring two cars. It's actually featuring the L, the base model, and the HL. I think the HL was a more popular choice though. I don't think I remember seeing too many base L models. Having said that, this is the base L model at the top, and actually reminds me more of my dad's car than this picture of a HL, because it is featured in this Eclipse Blue, which was the same colour as my dad's. So we'll zoom in on some of these images, read some of this text, and then we'll have a look how the trim continues. So here is the base model. I remember the problems with his one was under this front bumper, this metal part under the front bumper there. That rusted very early. I think there was actually a recall for them. You know, after maybe like 2 years, this was already rusted underneath here, and there was a recall on it. Did something or other to it, repainted it probably, rubbed it down. Another year at all. it started rusting again. So this had, by the end of its life, it had big holes in this area. Obviously, the correct thing would be to put a big plastic bumper all the way down to the bottom there, and you wouldn't have that problem. But that was certainly an issue with his rusting under that bumper. And like I said, this is just the L, but it reminds me more of my dad's because it was in the same colour as this. Just very basic pressed steel wheels. I remember they used to rust after no time at all as well. If we move down, this is the HL. Seen here in a, like I said on previous times, a colour I really relate to these cars in the 80s, or the Austin Rover cars in the early 80s. This opaline green, it was quite a nice colour. And this kind of reminds me of another issue my dad has with his Acclaim. The HL model didn't have any rubbing strips, like the L didn't either. You had to get the HLS to get rubbing strips, and I can always remember him now, his voice always complaining about supermarket car parks, people opening their doors and getting like car park rash down there. He always kind of wished he got the HLS, I think, with that rubbing strip down there. So that's the HL. This would have been the seat of the L. If you notice, no head restraints. And that is the HLS interior I remember so well, with the head restraints on there. And you got this little headlamp leveling switch on the HL. You can adjust that to move the headlights up and down. Quartz clock. And then quite a very plasticky interior, but a very logical interior, I always thought. You even got a rev counter on there. Kind of think that it was a little bit strange calling it the Triumph, and of course this is the last time the Triumph badge was used on a car. But strange calling it the Triumph. Austin Rover made more sense to call it the Rover Acclaim, I guess, and of course the Rover name came after this. But this time they didn't really associate Rover with small cars, so I guess that's why they used the Triumph badge. One of the other issues with the Acclaim, well, I've got it in this shot, only very small boots really. We as four of us, we could easily fit in there, but if we went away on vacation, that boot was always too small. Solution, we put a roof rack on there. Now I'm not going to read all this because it's quite a wordy section, but we're thinking all models in this range have got a 1.3 70 bhp engine with a 5-speed transmission. I always remember for what it was quite lively, I always thought. Maybe that's because I was a new driver, I don't know, but I always remember it to be reasonably lively. And then down the bottom there, it tells you the equipment that you got on the L model. I'm not going to read all this, but of course you can pause the screen if you want to read all the spec of the L if you want, although at the end there's a specification page which we're going to look at as well. And that's the last little bit of the L. Again, you can pause if you want to read the whole thing. Optional extras it's telling us about on there for the L. So you can get head restraints if you wanted to. And then we move on to the HL. So the HL, according to this, we've got extra benefits. So we've got larger 155 section tyres, headlamp leveling control in a centre console, digital clock, front seat head restraints, and new style Shetland tweed seat facings, plus a driver's remote boot lid and fuel filler releases, controls for the twin door mirrors, and a stylish coach line. And there were some extras you can get on the HL as well, including a auto transmission which they call Triumph. You couldn't get the Triumph on the L though, so this was the lowest model you could get that Triumph transmission. And there are the fuel economy figures. And like I say, I remember it being pretty fuel efficient for the time. And then we move up the range to the HLS, so we'll have a look at some of these images and some of the text. And as we zoom in, here is the HLS. I think this is a Porto red metallic, if anyone's wondering. You could instantly recognise the HLS by that rubbing strip that my dad always wanted on there. But other than that, it looks very similar. You can see it's not the CD because there isn't any headlamp washers. So that's your HLS. And if we look at the interior, very similar actually to the HL on the inside, or looking at the dash at least. I think you have a slightly better cassette player there. You do get this funny little rear seat boot hatch, which is just a very small little area. You didn't get that on the HL, that's for sure. Coin tray, you did get that on the, sorry about the camera wobbling around there, but you did get the coin tray on the HL though. Carpeted kick strips, still keep fit windows though. Like the HL, you got remote boot and fuel filler flap releases, and there is a door mirror remote control. And then finally, the seats do look a lot nicer actually than the HLs. This is hairline velvet seat coverings. So the HLS, still further distinctions are to be found on the Acclaim HLS model, starting with the halogen headlamps and side rubbing strips, and various other bits and pieces. Tinted glass laminated screen, and nicer, much nicer seats, I think, to the HL. It continues telling you about that little hatch for putting larger items in that you couldn't get on the HL. It's also saying when you fold it down it doubles as a picnic table, which is a little bit unusual to say. But anyway, if you wanted to read the full text, please do pause the screen and you can read all that. And there's the optional extras you can get on the HLS. You can even get air conditioning on there if you wanted. And then here you go, the top of the range Triumph Acclaim CD. Top of the range, all the fancies. Let's zoom in on these images and the text. So here we are, now zoomed in on the CD. And like I said at the start, they're most recognisable by the fact you had these headlamp washers on there, but also, a bit of extra bright work on the bumper as well. So yeah, this was the top of the range model. Start with the dashboard. Doesn't really stand out as being anything too much above the other models. You did get these fancy seats with these door pockets on though. The option of the Triumph transmission available on the HL, HLS and this CD model. This was the feature that kind of like stood it out from the rest, all this headlamp power wash. And the fact that it had electric windows, all of the fancy. And finally there is a look at the Rochelle fabric seating on this top of the range model. And here is the text for the CD. I'm not going to read all this out, I think we've covered most of it, but I will put it on there for a moment for you to pause the screen and read it all if you really want to. And then the top of the range one, you could option the air conditioning like you could on the HLS. You could also get that Triumph clutchless transmission like you could on the HL, HLS and this CD model. And it's telling us there's no charge for black or the metallics. Okay, so that's the full range. Let's have a look at the specifications. So as always, I'm not going to speak too much during the specifications and I'll probably move quite quickly, but of course you can pause the screen if there's anything particularly you wanted to see. So they've all got this 4-cylinder 1335cc engine with a 70 brake horsepower and a 5-speed all synchromesh gearbox. Remember, 5 speeds at this time, but you've also got the option of a 3-speed as well. And it gives you some detail about the suspension, steering and brakes. Oops. The wheels and tyres. Electrical. Oops, sorry about the camera riddling around a little bit there. There we go. The electrical. The instrumentation. This is for both the L and the HL. It's just telling us the HL has got the same as the L plus a digital clock, and above it's telling us it's got what the L has, but the HLS adds control for headlamp leveling. Interior features of the L, and it says the HLS adds tweed fabric seat facings, front seat head restraints, gear lever console with headlamp leveling control, passenger grab handle, boot lid and fuel filler remote releases, and a carpeted boot. Body features of the L plus the HL adds twin remote control door mirrors and a porch line. And then we move on to the Acclaim HLS. Same engine, same idea for the gearbox, same suspension, same steering, brakes, wheels and tyres. Electrical. Like I said, I'm just going to move quickly, so pause the screen if you do want to read any of this. Instrumentation. And then interior features. And then at the bottom here we've got body features. So that's all your HLS. Again, pause the screen if you want to, and we'll move on to the CD. Similar sort of story with mechanical. Wheels, yep, there's still just pressed steel, no alloy wheels in the Acclaim range, although they're a bit larger on the CD. Oops, I was trying to get electrical then. I failed miserably. Of course, you can pause it if you want to read the electrical. Instrumentation. And interior features. So again, you can pause it if you wanted to read all the interior features, and then we'll move on to the body features. And there are the body features. Let's have a look at the colours, have we? Unlike the rest of the range in this Austin Rover brochure, colour choice was really nice at the time, and I often say, I wish we had this sort of colour choice on new cars today. So you could get Aran White, you can get black, you can get rattan beige, silver leaf metallic. You couldn't get that cinnabar red though, but you could get cashmere gold metallic, Monza red, a Porto red metallic, Primly yellow you couldn't get, although I think it wouldn't look too bad, Orplan green metallic, Clove brown, Zircon blue metallic, Eclipse blue, which is the colour my dad's was, and Moonraker blue metallic you could not get. So there it is, the Triumph Acclaim, a car I have very good memories of through my childhood, and like I say, the car I first started learning to drive in. And for British Leyland, it was a turnaround car. We've now got reliability, we've now got good build quality, and that relationship with Honda has started. Happy times. Sad that the Triumph name went after this, but it made sense that they started using the Rover name as a smaller Rover, because next week we are looking at the big Rover. Thank you so much for watching today. Any memories of the Triumph Acclaim, put that in the comments. As always, appreciate you watching, appreciate you liking and subscribing and all that good stuff. But we'll be back real soon, so we'll say for now, take care and goodbye.